All right, we are live and we are 1 minute late because Fabian and I were just looking at our documentation and how stuff works and what we were showing today. Anyways, thank you so much for joining. I'm looking at the stats. We have 10 people watching. Yes. And that the moment we have 10, we're 1 minute late. Anyways, um, I hereby introduce you, Fabian Belisa. Do I say it like that? How do you say it?
Yeah, it's Belita. Yeah, it's more German.
So more German. It doesn't look like a German name to
It
me, or
it
is that
doesn't.
my
Yeah,
bad?
yeah. It's I don't actually know where it comes from. It's a bit weird. It's a super rare name. So yeah, I also don't know.
Ah, there you go. Same for mine. The only thing I know in if you translate this to like English, you can take it apart. It's Ben and Nix, which means am nothing. So I think my forefathers were just super lazy or didn't have a job, and that's the only thing I know. And the rest is that a lot of them migrated to the U.S. and that's all I know. Anyways, we don't have to talk about genealogy like that. Um, Fabian, tell the audience what you do. Maybe that's a good start.
Sure. Yeah, I'm Fabian. I'm a product manager here at Hygraph, and I work specifically with our core team, which is a very back-end heavy focused team. So working with the content API, working with our caching infrastructure, but also working with our asset system that we recently released. So the new asset system that we also will showcase a bit today, and Tim will try to show you everything that's there and maybe also break some things. We'll see. Hopefully not. But yeah,
We kind of just did, but that makes it fun, doesn't it?
yeah.
Yeah, because last week I actually did like a sort of a workshop like stream where I actually built something with this asset system. And so now we kind of just want to continue that and then talk about the stuff I didn't talk about then. Like, for example, what happens if I upload an MP4? Can I get an image out of that to show it on the screen as a poster? Or how do I upload a file? Or how do I import a file from a URL? And so maybe what we can do, I can share my screen and show the folks here what I built. And then from there, we can just enrich it and do a few other things. So this is what I came out with last week. So I built kind of this stock library starter fake website. It's kind of a starter kit. You can actually clone that code if you wanted to. Let me just see if I can put that in the chat. And so what's cool about this is that this actually directly makes you clone that Hygraph project. I put that in the chat for you. And then there's also some code involved. And let me just give you that as well. This is one in Next.js, which probably most people use. And so what I've done here, I have a bunch of assets in Hygraph and I just queried those and I didn't do that much data wise. So if you look at my data, I don't have any schemas other than the default asset that I upgraded with like an alt tag so I can add some extra information. And so when you look at all the assets, they're all here. I uploaded them in batch basically. And then you have a little alt tag, send batch on beach. And so this just comes from a website called paxels.com. And so I query them and I put them on the page. And where the asset system comes in is that these are now actually squares and they are super compressed and they're using an automated image type. So not the PNG that it was, but like a WebP or an AVIF or something like that. And so that's what was in there. And then when you click, it actually shows you a bigger version and you can download the original, which has no compression at all. All right. Those are the basics. Um, So, Fabian, I know that when I said the words AVIF, somewhere in the back of my brain it said, Tim, are you sure we have those? So, could you talk about that for a second?
Yeah, sure, of course. Yeah. So Avis is something that we'll also release quite shortly.
Yeah.
It's right now we support WebP, all the other basic image formats, but Avis
Mhm.
is something that will be coming in the next couple of weeks. There's still some things we need to tweak because it behaves a bit different than the other images. It's also coming from a video codec actually, so there's a few
Yeah.
things that need to be fine-tuned there, but overall it will be included. And as Tim mentioned, the most common use case will be using this auto image where like we can actually detect what the browser or the client wants to have as an image format and then return the best one based on that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, maybe now that we're on that, let's see if I actually inspect this. And oh, I'm not sure that's the right place. Here we go. If I inspect this. And so, let's open this in a new tab. So this is the image that I made smaller with a bunch of transitions from Hygraph, you can see here I have a resize fit crop, and there is this one image. Oh yeah, here it says auto image. I think I can zoom in. Yeah, here we go. And so could you kind of explain how do we know as a CMS that for this context, whatever comes out of this thing is the best one?
Yeah, it feels like magic, but it's actually pretty
Yes.
straightforward because the browser sends an accept header for every request that it makes, and in that
Hmm.
request header, it will include sort of the order in which they want the browser or whatever sends it. The client can also send it. What they want the image to be in which format. And WebP is typically in Chrome will be the first one because they prefer it.
Yeah,
And that's essentially what we take a look at. And then if there's like maybe there's some weird stuff in there, we'll just fall back to JPEG and return that as a
exactly.
default.
So we can just look at your browser. That's very interesting. And so here would it be the content disposition?
It's actually in the request header. I think these are the response headers. So if you scroll, I think it's a bit lower below the
So
response headers.
oh,
If you
so yeah,
collapse
of course.
them, yeah, there's the request headers, and there should be an accept somewhere. Yeah, there it is. And it has a certain
Oh yeah, it can
yeah,
do a few things. And
exactly.
so
And the
it
first
can
one
do
we find, the
yeah.
first one we find, we will select essentially. And
Oh,
Ava,
that's
since it's not
great.
supported yet, it would be the one that actually would be returned, but now
Yeah.
it's WebP.
And I can only imagine, because this is just me being a super image nerd, at one point, if we wanted to, you could actually look at the image and see, hey, if we compress this to a WebP or an AVIF, one of the two is going to look better, or one of the two is going to be a smaller footprint. If we wanted to do stuff like that, we could, I imagine. If
Potentially,
we should, it's another story,
there-
but
there's some really cool stuff that our team has built, specifically Jonas and Melinda around the asset system, where we obviously wanted to make sure with this new asset system that it behaves
Mhm.
similar to the old one. So
Yeah,
they
sure.
actually built a test suite that does a pixel comparison between both images. So we can do
Okay.
a
Wow.
transformation on the old system and compare it to the new one and have a pixel sort of check and see, is it actually the same image or not? And if there's some weird differences, we can check out why it happens and maybe tune that a bit.
Oh, that's super interesting. And so, with that in mind, I'm sorry, I'm going to go all over the place here because I like this stuff. I'm very excited by it. If you look at this, like you see fit, colon, crop, height, width, compress, is this the same URL structure as we had before?
Yeah, it's exactly the same one. We
Okay,
want to
cool.
make sure that it works the same and there's no breaking changes. The only thing that will really change if you will move from the new to the old system or the other way around from the old to the new system
Mhm.
is the start of the URL, because now you have that regional asset URL. There's a
Yeah,
new
exactly.
environment
Mm,
identifier coming right
yeah,
after it. So the CUID right after. Then you have the transformations, and right after the transformations, you have the CUID of the entry, the asset entry itself. And that's kind of
yeah.
the main difference.
Yeah, because before we had this ID, and let me zoom in again. So we had this ID for only before, and
Yeah.
now we actually have. I'm trying to zoom out with my laptop here. So actually, we have the proper file name after it. But if I don't add it, it still works, right? There we
Yeah,
go.
it still works the
That's cool.
same. It's an optional thing you can add.
Yeah, it's all these lovely extra things that make this thing more mature. And then people just like things like this, right? All right. So I just went all over the place with all my questions because of my excitement here. So, what if I had a whole archive of images on another website and I kind of want to move them to Hygraph because of all these fun features? Um, what would be a way to do that programmatically? Because I don't want to drag and drop like 1,000 images, for example. Is
Yeah,
there
sure.
a
There's like,
way I can kind of maybe I want to know about two. First, I have them on another website and the URLs are accessible. And then the
Mhm.
second one is, let's say I have them all on a hard drive. I kind of want to upload all the originals. Um, which one do you want to start with to explain to me?
I think the easiest one is probably the one if the asset is already somewhere hosted. So we have a URL that's publicly accessible. And
Yeah.
that's now with the new asset system relatively straightforward, where all you need is the URL, and then you can send off a create asset mutation, and it will be uploaded in the background.
Yeah, okay. That makes sense. So let's say we just go back to this. This is the site that I grabbed my images from initially. So how about we grab something like this? Because you can see how the crop works to go square later on, right? So let's just grab this one. And they actually add a bunch of stuff to the URL as well. I don't want that. I just want the completely native one. Okay, so let's copy this. And then I imagine we have to go, like, how does this work now? Do I just go and write some JavaScript and add like like fire it off and it just does an Ajax call, or how does that work? What do I do?
It works with the native GraphQL API. So as soon as you
Oh, that's
have
awesome.
any sort of token or anything, even in the web app, if you go into the playground, you can already test it out.
Oh,
And essentially just allows you to send a mutation that creates an asset, and there you have two options that you can choose between sending something. Yeah.
all right. So we are here. Let's just one step back. We can actually do a mutation in our playground and it just works.
Yep.
That's pretty awesome. And so let's see. So we are mutating with the URL upload. So I already pasted this, people. We prepped. I seemed like I'm surprised, but I knew this. Anyway, so what I did now, wait, is there a way to make this bigger so we can actually show the I
I
don't
think
think
on the
I can
left
make,
side, you can, the Explorer, you can also,
can I
there's
also
a
make the,
third button from the top, the folder one, a little bit above. This one, yeah. And you can,
that's not a hide. It says a plus. This makes a new folder. How is this hiding something? My apologies. This is not something Hygraph built. This is actually an out of the box GraphQL playground. Okay, so what we're doing here is we're mutating and we create an asset, and the data with the upload URL is actually the thing I just pasted in here, the stuff we got from here, right? And then we just retrieve other things like after it. Right, so let's see. So what we just did is we basically just queried Hygraph with my delivery API, um, ability, or how do you call this? Like the fact that I'm allowed to do it. And so we got back an asset. So let's actually go to our assets and see. There it is. And so it does make it a draft. So I think, well, when we look at this, my alt is still empty. So I think they probably have a title here. Here. This must be an AI generated alt tag they did. A woman in a trench coat with white boots, 100%.
it's descriptive,
That's
right?
fine. It's true. Okay, so let's just publish this thing. And so now we can just go back to my website and see if it's there. There it is. And now you see here how fast that was, right? So it already made, like, this transformation was basically just done. And so I haven't seen the next page yet. So the transformation for that image that we're going to see is not done. So what it's doing is it's making it the maximum width of 1280, and it doesn't touch the height, and it does some compression, so it optimizes the thing a little. So let's say that's how fast it is. Dude, that's great, isn't it? So, and then here we have the original, which is rather large. And so doing it on the fly that fast, that's super cool. It feels like we might be in business to do something with asset management, but maybe not. We are CMS in the end. Anyways, so that works pretty well. And I imagine if I had 1,000 images and I had a list of URLs, I could probably just write some JavaScript that loops over the URLs. And every time it loops over a URL, it kind of just does this mutation, right? Is that how
Exactly,
you
yeah.
would do it?
The main benefit now is like the same way you would normally import content entries, right? If you have like 1,000 blog posts you want to port over, you would also create a mutation to create all of these and just loop through
Exactly.
that essentially. And the same you can do now with asset because it's also part of the API. It's super easy if it's just hosted somewhere. You have the URL, you can just run through it. And also
Yeah.
one important thing to mention is the moment you send off this mutation, it's firing off like an async process. So behind the scenes, our asset handler will actually then take the URL, make a request to it, request the asset, download it, and then handle all of it. And it happens, as you saw, in like a matter of like not even a second, it's done. But it's still an async process just to make sure that you can send off a couple of those and they will be worked on after each other, and then everything is
Yeah.
available. Yeah.
So that means I could do these 1,000 queries. Well, I won't do them in parallel, but I could go over them quite fast without getting
Yeah.
timeout and stuff, because it just sets a queue somewhere, I imagine.
Yeah, as long as you are within the rate limit of the actual content API,
Sure.
you will be good to go. Yeah.
Awesome. So now the next one. What if I have the file on like my hard drive? And
Yeah,
that one is a little bit more involved, right?
exactly. Yeah, this is something where we make direct use of pre-signed URLs, and that's something that I can show
Yeah, I'll
real
just
quick
put
how it works.
you on.
Yeah. Yeah, so I have a similar project which I used to code alongside in your demo for last week's session. So I have a
Mhm.
few assets in here, and the way that it works is, as mentioned, somewhat similar. So in this case, we don't need to pass anything in the create asset data object. We can pass an optional file name if you want to. That will override whatever file we pass. And then what's more important is what we retrieve from that mutation. So there's an upload object, and in there we have a request post data. And this one is super important because all of these fields we will need to actually then send the asset to our system. So what happens now if I click this is I get back all of the data. And now this is the important section that we take a look at. And over here, I also prepared a postman where we can make a call like this and use a local file that I have on my system. So what we'll do is I'll just head over here essentially and copy all of this over. Quickly do that. There's the date.
And so
Um,
essentially what this is doing is it's asking Hygraph, can I please create an asset and get the access for the coming hour to do that? And then
yeah, exactly.
Hygraph
It's
says, here are all the credentials that you need to put it on our Amazon S3 bucket, essentially,
yeah, yeah. That's
right?
pretty much what works. And there's even there's this expired add field here that I also asked for, and you can see it will expire in like 15-ish minutes, like 25-ish
Okay.
minutes. It will expire, and if you send it afterwards, it will not work anymore. But for the meantime, it will work. Yeah.
And so why we do this is actually pretty important because there are so many like security issues where you have an open S3 bucket that's not being secured, and then people can just access it, and that's problematic, right? And so Amazon has made this amazing system where you can kind of have a signed URL and kind of open it for 10 minutes only for that person, and that's what this is doing, and then it closes it again. Because imagine if you are like a magazine, a fashion magazine, and you're uploading all your photo shoot files that you're only allowed to use for like 3 months. You better not want those stolen, right? So that's basically the way.
Exactly.
I'm just saying hi to Melinda. What's up, dude?
Hey,
Welcome.
hey,
So,
Melinda.
so you're filling out all the headers.
Exactly. So I filled out everything now. We can see that there's like an Unsplash image I have attached, which is just
Yeah.
local. The important part is it's sending as a form data, and it's also a post request. Those are the important parts. And if I now send it off, I will get back a just 204 no content because there's nothing actually to be returned from our side. Then I
Of
head back
course,
here,
because this
and
essentially goes directly to S3, right?
yeah, pretty much it just tells it, okay,
Yeah.
we got the request, all fine. And you can see there's the image here now. It's the same one from Unsplash
Yeah. There you
that we
go.
just created. And that's essentially it. And now it works the same way and everything's there. Hey,
Wow.
Jonas.
Yeah. What's up, dude? So it feels like to me it's kind of a lot of steps, but it's also a security thing. And the fact that you can just ask Hygraph in this context, I want to create an asset for this delivery API. Please give me the URLs basically, or give me all the information.
Yeah.
Could you do you always have to do this? I imagine, yeah, because you have 15 minutes basically to do it.
Yeah, like essentially, like with code, it will be a lot simpler because in code, you can just call the mutation and then you get back the response and you can just use these fields in a pre sort of created mutation and then a call. So it's much, much easier than what I just did with copying it over
Exactly.
manually. But yeah, it's for every image you want to upload, you essentially send this mutation, you get back the information, you actually do it within 15 to 25 minutes.
Mhm.
And then you just go through it essentially and do it one by one.
And so if I have a list of like 500 images, do I do create asset 500 times or
Yeah.
just once?
No, 500 times. Yeah. It will be for
Ah, all
each
right.
of
So they
them.
all
Yeah.
get their own thing essentially.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool. Well, that then makes the code super easy, essentially. Cool. So now that we've covered that, um, I'm just looking at my notes. There's a few other things I wanted to go into. So we have a bunch of different ways to transform these images, right? So let me just put my screen back on and we go to our lovely documentation because there's a ton of different things that we've built in. And I feel like with our previous system, we did have a few, but it was third party, so we didn't really describe them and people didn't really use them. But now we build it ourselves, so we have much more control over them. And now we actually did describe them. And so for me, what's super interesting, what I, as an image nerd, never saw before, you can do all these transformations in your GraphQL query, which to me was a little strange because, but actually it isn't, but to me, because I would always say, just give me the raw file and then I will just make like an algorithm to create me a URL on the place where I want the image to show in that context. As it turns out, in GraphQL, you can query one image 16 different times by just naming it differently in GraphQL and get a different version. And so you can almost like template what you get back. And so while I'm saying this, maybe I should actually show you because it's super interesting. Let's see if I can, from my code base, copy something to show. Right, so we have, oh yeah, here. Let me just put this one in. You know what? I'll just grab all assets. It's a little bit easier. And let's hide this one. And so per page, well, I want the first 30 essentially. That's what this is. All right. So what we're looking at here is I can just grab the URL of this image. And then I can add transformations to it, which is crazy. I can also just ask for the URL on its own. Right? So the URL is actually this one. So this is the native image. And then, then the one where we added this transformation to, oh, by the way, I found this out in last week's workshop. When I click this, I actually get documentation here on the left. That's super cool. I don't get it for all of them though.
I think it's always the top image, the top part where you can get it. So if you click on the transformation one, the other one, you can drill down a bit yourself.
Ah, you can drill down.
Yeah, on the left side, you have the transformations, and then you have the image or document, and then each of those will have different types. And it
so
also describes what it does and what the values have. So it's essentially while you build your query, you can already find it or don't even need to go over to our docs to find out.
Exactly. So basically, this is in addition to the docs. If you didn't want to go there like that, you could potentially just have a look at like, hey, so my format is auto image. What else do I have? And then you can have a look at the different ones. So that's pretty cool to see in here. So can I also remove this? Yes. And so the grid version has a transformation for the image. So it resizes it to 300 by 300 and crops it. As you can see, I didn't put an X and a Y here, but how does that work? If I put an X of 400 here, what would happen?
I think in this specific one, it won't support any coordinates. This is the specific, there's another crop that you can do outside of the resizing, where you can actually pass dimensions. Yeah.
Okay,
This
we'll
is just
check
a
that in a
super
sec.
quick one. When you resize, just do a crop as well, but then you have a dedicated crop which is way more powerful than this one.
And that has a bunch more. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And then so we're compressing, and this essentially just removes the metadata from, like, it is all the, how do you call this stuff again? All this metadata. There's this specific name. It doesn't matter. It strips it, so the image is much lighter, which is very important. And then you can set a quality, and then you can say the document output here. So if we wanted to do another one specifically for Fabian, let's see. We do want, a transformation. Ah, Mirko, yes, EXIF. This is what I meant. This is the brain you get from me from a day where I also made a video and had a bunch of meetings. My apologies. Okay, so we could make a transformation here. So let's see what we want to do. We can actually go to our documentation. And so I kind of just want to blur it.
Sure.
Because why not? So we're going to add a blur on the image transformation here. Right? And so let's see what just this. Let's see what comes out. So we made the normal URL. That's the default. Then we have Fabian's one. So let's have a look what came out. Oh, that's definitely blurred. And so we can actually see it's added blur equals amount 4 in there. So if I wanted to make that bigger, I could potentially also do it on the URL.
Yeah.
So Fabian, in your mind, what do you think people should do? Always in GraphQL, or maybe build a bit of JavaScript that concatenates a URL together?
I think it really depends on sort of the requirements and what you want to do with it, right? Even with GraphQL, it's then super easy to build some kind of source set where you have just different image types for different
Yeah,
screen sizes.
exactly. Yeah, you
That's super
can.
easy, but there's also maybe developers that just prefer to do it by hand. They say, give me this URL, I'll handle the rest. I'll just make sure that everything works together nicely
Well,
with the
that's
code.
me personally.
Yeah. So that's the beauty of it. You have both options and can just choose whatever you want. So it really depends on the use case, I would say. It's not anything where it's black and white. You can say you use this always there and the other one there. But yeah, you have the option of both. So that's the nice thing.
Okay, so I also want to do the crop on top of the blur. And so this would go inside, right? Okay,
Yeah, it
so
would be another option in image. Yeah.
I've never done this kind of transformations of images in GraphQL before. And I must say, this is pretty cool. Because like you just said, I didn't even think about it. I could make an SRC set in here.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Okay, so now what we added is the following. Let's have a look. So we blurred it and then cropped it. So that blur is pretty big. Oh, that's interesting. The blur seems to be bigger now that the image is smaller. Hmm. Oh, I know why. It cropped it out now. So we had the crop. And so we're cropping X, Y, and then width and height. So
Yeah.
we're dealing with, let's see, can I focus that? There's this, oh yeah, there we go. So X, Y, 100 by 200, and then we crop that out. That's pretty cool. And so with that in mind, if you wanted to build like a focus point selector custom thing in Hygraph, you could actually do that using
Yeah.
actually Hygraph's own image manager. That's pretty fun.
Exactly.
So there's so many of those things that we can do. So in what does a quality setting do essentially? Is it like the old school, like I have JPEG quality setting 1 to 100? Is that literally that?
Yeah, pretty much. That's essentially what it does. Just like making sure that the image has it can reduce the size quite drastically depending how low you go, but obviously it also might change how it looks. So it's always
Yeah,
a thing where you need
exactly.
to play around a bit and see how it looks. But yeah, it's kind of
Exactly.
that
So
thing.
let's see what Jonas is adding here. So one thing to keep in mind, and GraphQL forces you in the right direction there, is that you want to avoid having two dynamic URLs to improve caching. Yeah, exactly. So if you constantly dynamically create them, you might get a different transform every time if you put it in different orders and stuff. Where
Yeah.
I guess in GraphQL it always stays the same. Like my personal thing against it would be that in the GraphQL query, you might not know in what context a user is going to look at this image, right? Because maybe I want to do a picture tag, and then on a small screen I want it to be square and a certain size, and then on a big screen I want it to be its full size and not square and not cropped, whatever. The thing is, when you do a GraphQL query with that in it, and then next year you do a redesign, you have to change your GraphQL queries. So
Fair
that
point.
would be my personal drawback of it. But then imagine personally having to build a URL concatenator for all those things, having to write your own unit test and your own support system for that. That's also a big thing to do.
Yeah.
And so I think as DevRels in Hygraph, we're going to have a look at how it works with those URLs, though, because meta frameworks like Astro, Next, they all have image implementations, right? And I can actually probably show you. I built this one a while back. Let's see here. So let's zoom in. So there's actually a Nuxt image provider with Hygraph. I built this one a while back, basically. And so You can just do next image provider this, and then only the base URL. And then you can see, you can add the fit, the format, the quality, all that stuff. You can add it in like this, and it concatenates the URL for you, which is also pretty cool. Like if you have a look, but then you have to look at that code, right? You'll see I've had a bit of pain writing that, and it's unit tests. It's like there's a lot of crazy stuff going on to actually make that work. And me personally, I love this stuff. But this might not be for everyone. And now that we have the new system in place, I'm assuming this still works, but I didn't add all the properties here. Right.
Yeah.
And so you see, there's lots of ifs and else's. So if you are a developer and you're into doing stuff like this, make sure you do it, obviously. However, the base URL is media@graphassets.com, and I don't think that's the base URL anymore, right?
Yeah, it's the
Would
regional
that
one
still
now.
work though?
Yeah, it should. Yeah, it's essentially the same thing. Like all the transformations work the same. It's just that the URL would be a bit different with the base URL containing the env ID as well, and then afterwards you have the handle. So it's
Well,
just
luckily
an
you can
additional
change
thing.
it. There's a
Yeah.
base URL option that you can just put in. And so there are lots of meta framework that most people use that give you like, hey, we have an image tag, so you don't have to make your own source set kind of thing. Like Nuxt gives you a lot of extra things on top where it basically just you can do this. Like this is not native. You shouldn't normally do this, but they will make a whole source set for you from this. And all these integrations, also the one I made, will just follow this. And so
Mhm.
there is, you know, an argument to be made potentially to do it on the URL. Let's see. So we've added the blur. We've done a bunch of stuff. So is there something that we're still missing from this whole story? Like I think two things. And so if you have something else, Fabian, let's think about that too. So first, what about files? Like we're looking at like images now, right? But what do we do with like PDFs, or what do we do with Word documents, or maybe even videos? Can you elaborate a little bit on our features around that stuff?
Sure, yeah. So for PDF specifically, so at the end of the day, you can upload sort of any file type that you would want, right? There might be 3D objects, there might be docx's, there might be PDFs, anything really.
Mm-hmm.
And specifically with PDFs, there's also transformations for that available. So if you have a PDF, you can transform it to an image, which might be cool to just show a preview real quick somewhere.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, with all of these, with docx, you can just upload them. And if you request them via the URL, it would depend on what the browser does if you open it, or you can just provide a download option for it as well. So docx might be rendering in the browser if it supports it, and the same for PDF. And then you can just
Yeah.
take a look at it as like you would with any other PDF URL that you get from somewhere.
And do we have sort of an opinion basically on how we stream stuff? Because I did this conference talk a while back where I had MP3s on a server, and I played guitar along these backing tracks that were MP3s, right? And so when I actually got them from Hygraph, they were streamed in chunks, which is
Mhm.
probably the most optimal way of streaming something. But one hiccup and my whole song would be destroyed, because all the timing is based on whatever that song is, because I had chapters and guitar sounds and all that. What are our opinions on how that works, or do we have any at all?
Yes, so far with the new asset system, at least, there isn't really any yet. So with the first
Okay.
iteration, we mainly focused on these kind of image types and just being able to support all kind of file types to just upload them and then also just download them. But there isn't really anything related to yet streaming video or audio files. Might be something we take a look at in the future, but for now, it's really unopinionated when it comes to that.
Yeah, exactly. Because you can even set in your video file itself, in the first few bits, you can actually encode it that it would stream the whole thing or download the whole thing and then show it, or start streaming for 5 seconds and then wait for download. There's so many options there. I can imagine that's kind of a headache to build in. And that's also why lots of like companies that actually do this kind of delivery stuff, they don't focus on images. They focus on images first and the rest later, because that's kind of intense. And I can imagine if you want to do it even more seriously and be a video streamer, that's going to be pretty serious stuff.
Definitely.
And yeah, and some CMSs focus on it more than others, and I think we have a pretty good balance here. But in the end, I took the MP3s and put them on for sale directly, and then let their CDN stream them, and then it was fine. And so for my use case, this was very specific, right? I just needed the whole file to be downloaded, essentially. So are there any alternatives in our CMS for assets? What if I need a DAM? What if I have some super serious image needs? What else do we support for this?
Oh, there's quite a few that we have. I think if you take a look at our marketplace, there's a bunch of apps related to digital asset management.
I'll show you. Okay, so let's do.
Exactly.
Oh, there we go. Oh, there we go. That's cool. And so essentially you could grab one of those, and then this is an integration into Hygraph, right?
Yeah, exactly. So how it works with most of them, for example, Cloudinary, is that you'll get a Cloudinary field, which essentially mimics a bit the way that our image field works with normal Hygraph images, but it connects to your Cloudinary account, and you can select images that are actually hosted in Cloudinary, besides our internal DAM.
Oh yeah, I'll show this in a second because I have that running actually. And so, oh yeah, this is actually important. Romina is saying that we have integration guides for these apps. So if you're interested in, let's say, using Cloudinary or Mux, for example, Lo, one of our DevRels, made a really cool starter kit called Hygraph that uses Mux for video streams. And I'm using Cloudinary basically, I think, for everything. I love it. I'm one of their ambassadors, so I better not use Binder, let's be fair. I could show you a little bit of that. Let's go to Hygraph and let's see, where is my, oh, it's not on this account. Okay, let me just quickly log into another account and show you how I use Cloudinary. Alive and kicking. This is on my personal account, and so as you can see, this one is not in studio yet because it's I made this like a pretty long time ago. So assets is empty, but the website is full of stuff. Oh, something went wrong there. Let's just quickly reset. Oh, this is an extra secret config nobody's supposed to say. But that's fine. Only my user account can do that. So if I log out, let's say application, just nuke everything. All right, so there's lots of images around here. And so when you actually, and you'll see many more if I log in. I don't have to do that now, but lots of stuff comes from Cloudinary actually in here. And so there's no assets in here. But if you look at the content, let's say, let's do the ACDC, for example. Actually here, you can see there's a cover image. And then there's artwork of this song, and it's all coming from Cloudinary. So you can see the image here, and then there's an add from Cloudinary button. And so I will just open up one that's in draft so I don't destroy my production. So when I click on this, it wants me to log in into Cloudinary. Okay, we can do that. I'm almost so worried that I'm showing my passwords and stuff, but luckily I use one password, so we're quite good. And so this actually now opened Cloudinary for me, and I can actually go to folders, and this is now my DAM essentially. Right, so there's lots of images here in, and also have this alive and kicking folder where I'm basically just dealing with all the things I need to deal with. I can tag images, and I have like different folders of other things, and I can make like there's even presets here that I can use to already crop it in Cloudinary. And so now I can just add an image here. And so let's save this one. You know what? I'm not going to save it, but I will do an API playground so you can see what comes out. So let's see. So let's do a new query for one of those songs, or let's just do all songs. Then I don't have to do a where. And let's find the cover and the artist. So what we get from this is actually this whole thing comes out of Cloudinary, right? So we have this cover, and then there's an ID, a URL, and then the tags, the types. Like you see, there's a lot of different things. So in Hygraph, we're basically just storing this object that comes out of Cloudinary, and with that, you can do a bunch of stuff. So, is there anything specific, Fabian, we should go over in this regard?
I think that's pretty much. It depends what you want to show. I think there's nothing really from my side.
No, there's nothing super special here. Like they just give you like this is like the original image, and then in Cloudinary, in my own Cloudinary setup, I have a few of predefined things. Like you see, there's these derived URLs. And there's some basic transformations that they always do. And basically what Cloudinary does, and we don't have to go too deep into it now, but they essentially do the same as what Hygraph Asset Manager does, but then like 2.0 version of it. Like it's their whole business. You basically have Photoshop in the browser. Like there's one thing that's kind of fun to show. Let's see if I can do that on the screen here. Let's log in. Let's say I select a few songs. And so without going into what this all means, I'm basically creating the 4 songs that I would play on stage as a user. But the cool thing is I use Cloudinary to share an image that I concatenate with all the information from Hygraph. So that's basically this. So I chose these 4 songs, right? And so this image is actually created with Cloudinary. And so this image is my GitHub image. And these assets actually are all set up in Hygraph by, the song that we were looking at. And then the images come from Cloudinary. So it uses Cloudinary to fetch Hygraph stuff that then fetches Cloudinary. And then it concatenates all this together. You can see how big that URL is because it's all layered. Like this whole thing was made in code. So if I now vote on another song, this will change. So you can make like that goes really far. We don't have to do that with Hygraph because it's not our business. But it's super cool that we're very close to it. And so me as an image aficionado, I'm really excited by that stuff. And so I see we have a bunch of people watching. If anybody has a question regarding our images, this is the time because Fabian knows everything. I just have some opinions. He just knows it all. So feel free to ask a question. And if you don't know a question now, we can definitely invite you here. You can actually come to slack@hygraph.com because that's our community where you can ask any questions. And also we have a specific feedback channel about our new studio launch and the asset manager, and people can ask questions there. Or if you want to show something and say, hey, this is what I made with your stuff, please do so here because we love that, right? And I think, oh, this is a better banner. Join the community on Slack. And so also all the documentations you just saw, you can see those here at hygraph.com/docs. And also, and not everybody might expect this, except for the people that work here, this was all free. So everything you see, we just showed you, you can just use it on the free account. And so I just had to do all my CTAs now. So Fabian, is there anything in the end that you wanted to talk about? Maybe your experience building this thing, or maybe you have a CTA of your own. Go for it.
I don't have a CTA, but yeah, I just gotta say also shout out to the team. Like The project has been going on for a couple of months, and it's been not super easy the whole time. And I think we found a really good solution. And
Mm,
as we showed last week, I think performance also speaks for itself, especially around cloning, especially around transformation. So I'm super
yeah,
happy that we were able to do it. And I encourage everyone to just give it a try, create a new project, try out a new asset system, play around a bit, upload some stuff, do transformations. If you find anything that doesn't work, please also let us know via Slack, via our support tools. We're more than happy to help and fix those things. But yeah, very proud of the team and what they've done.
that's great. I do have one question. Just came up.
Sure.
What if I have a project that still uses the older system
Mhm.
because they're both living next to each other? How do I get the new one?
Exactly. Yeah, this is something that in this quarter that just started, we're working on right now, and we want to provide migration tooling. How that
Hmm.
exactly will look like, we'll provide some more communication around that when the time comes. But you can expect that in the next couple of months, you'll have the opportunity to try it out on your existing older project that still uses our old system, and then just try it out, give it a go, and see how everything works. And then yeah, that's essentially the time to switch.
All right. And so I imagine every new project you make now will just have the new system
Exactly.
because it essentially functions similarly. It should feel the
Yeah.
same, but faster.
Yeah, from the web app perspective, like if you use Hygraph Studio or if you use Classic, it will be kind of the same. The only difference is the upload widget. So if you upload a new
Yeah.
asset via the web app, from the API perspective or the transformation, it looks the same. There's more additional stuff, and the URL is a bit different, but that's mainly it. And then the rest is kind of similar.
Awesome. All right, dude. Thank you so much for your time and showing me all the things and dealing with me failing and clicking on weird buttons. Thank you so much.
Thank you for
And
having me.
we'll see you next week. Cheers.
Bye bye.